In different parts of Russia, there are places that are notorious, but in reality they should be called perilous places, because people disappear and die there without a trace due to some unknown mystical reasons. And so ahead are 5 perilous places in Russia. On the border of the Vladimir and Moscow regions is one of the most famous dead places in Russia, which is called Traksnoy Shore. The phenomenon of this place, so far no one has been able to explain, but dozens of testimonies about the most mysterious things that happen in this place suggest that the tract cannot be called ordinary. At the end of the 17th century, the Kolomna tract was laid next to the tract. People began to disappear there, not only lonely travelers, but sometimes entire carts. From the end of the 19th century to 1920, about 20, including mass disappearances, occurred here. The local Department of Internal Affairs has piled up numerous cold cases of disappeared people. None of the disappeared could be found. They all went into the woods and were never seen again. There are various explanations for their disappearance. Some attribute them to natural causes, that travelers in those dense places could simply get lost or drown in the swamp. There is also an opinion that at the end of the 19th century there was a rampant band of robbers in those places who used the reputation of the place. People were robbed and killed, and the word of mouth blamed the disappearance on a terrible ruinous place. But this theory has never been confirmed. It is very interesting that one of the first researchers of this mysterious tract was the famous traveler and geographer Semyonov Tyanshansky. According to the famous explorer, there is an ancient megalithic complex among the Shumshore's lakes and swamps. Ancient legends also speak of the existence of a granite hemisphere about 5 or 6 meters in diameter, surrounded by stone columns with incomprehensible signs. But unfortunately, the exact location of the unique site was not specified, and so far none of the numerous expeditions has been able to find it. And some anomalous places have not revealed their secrets for centuries. One such place is a swamp located near the city of Cherepovets. Bogs, about 5 meters deep, are covered with eerie rumors and legends, which is not surprising. In these swamps people disappear en masse, and the number of cases of people disappearing without a trace runs into the dozens. It would seem that this is a swamp, and there is nothing surprising in the disappearance of people, except that there are many very strange circumstances. To begin with, there has been a real epidemic of suicides in the surrounding region for decades. And locals are diagnosed with manic-depressive psychosis with an enviable regularity, and many refer to an evil spirit that lives in the marshes and from which it is impossible to get rid of. But back to the mysterious disappearances. This place has had a bad reputation since Tsarist times. Even back then, people regularly disappeared in those places, and here's the strange thing. When people did not return, carts with goods, wagons, and other things were often found in this perilous place. There was one circumstance that united these finds. All the things and valuables remained intact, but the people who owned them could not be found. But there were witnesses who, faced with the anomalies of this place, were able to get out and tell what happened to them. So according to one of the witnesses, being in the area of the bogs, he experienced an unreasonable fear that pushed him to commit suicide. In attempts to explain the terrible phenomenon of the Cherepovets bogs, an interesting hypothesis was put forward. Scientists suggested that the bottom of the swamps is dotted with special vegetation, which during decay releases hallucinogenic substances. And when a person inhales these substances, he or she panics at a small dose or maniacal desire to commit suicide if the dose is too high. And this hypothesis makes more sense than some kind of evil spirits or evil energy in this spooky place. Not far from the village of Lady in the Pskov region, there is a very mysterious place called Devil's Ravine. So what has Devil's Ravine earned its name? Since the 19th century, people have been disappearing without a trace around the ravine. Even before the revolution, several peasants disappeared in the Devil's Ravine, and sometime later 7 loggers disappeared without a trace. Even in the surrounding villages, whole families disappeared, and in Soviet times, in 1974, another terrible story happened. A company of mushroom pickers came to the village and wanted to pick mushrooms in the Devil's Ravine and its environs. The villagers dissuaded them from this dangerous venture, but the mushroom pickers only laughed and said they would soon return with a rich harvest. Only 2 people were able to return from the Devil's Ravine. They appeared on the outskirts of the village in a terrible state. The mushroom pickers were completely insane and could not explain what had happened to them and where their friends had disappeared to. The search for the 5 missing mushroom pickers went on for a long time. They checked the entire area, but the search still yielded nothing. The last unexplained incident occurred several years ago when another company of mushroom pickers went to pick mushrooms and missed their friend on the way. The company did not sound the alarm because the lost man was very experienced and navigated the area well. They started looking for him only on the 3rd day and found him on the 10th. It turned out that the man had been aimlessly wandering around and eating berries and mushrooms all that time. His exhausted body was found by one of the residents of the nearby village. The man survived, but could not say anything, and the mystery of this perilous place has not yet been solved. The coastal area is about 4 meters deep, skirting a 17-meter deep bottom hole, and the lake has been a place where the real devilry has been going on for ages. According to many witnesses, an island suddenly appears in the middle of the lake. Here is one of the witnesses dated from the 60s of the last century. When in the neighborhood life was still in full swing, all of a sudden, in a small raft an island appeared, as if it had always been there. The pine trees, reeds, grass. After the appearance of this island, there were brave people who tried to swim to it, but not everyone came back. One of those who managed to return said that something unimaginable happens near the island. Lights appear and disappear all around, and you hear howling and ringing in your ears. But the strangeness of the lake does not end there. People are frightened that even the most experienced locals sometimes lose their bearings in the surrounding area. Some go missing, and those who are found usually do not remember and cannot explain what happened to them. Scientists believe that through fractures in the Earth's crust under the lake, gases like helium or selenium can come to the surface, which strongly affect the human psyche and physical state. That is why people have an altered state of consciousness, appear visual and auditory hallucinations. And the next deadly place also lies in the Pskov region, and there is a belief that misfortune will soon happen to the person who wants to talk about it. Well, let's risk it. The so-called Lagnian Glade is really notorious. To begin with, the only nearby village has almost died out in the last half-century, and the worst thing is that the death of many of its inhabitants was unnatural. And it was not only diseases that were affecting healthy people. People were drowning, falling off roofs, breaking necks, horses were carrying and throwing their owners to death. The locals tell a sinister tale that about 50 years ago, several cows wandered away from the herd and got lost in the woods. A shepherd, along with 2 boys, set out in search of them. They soon reached a huge glade where no grass was growing. The ground on it was as if charred, and the cows, which happened to come to the glade, lay dead. The shepherds felt a severe headache and hurried away from that terrible place, and the locals later recalled legends about the cursed clearing that had been lying in those places from ancient times. In the 60s, this area was very attractive to explorers. Due to the local mystical stories, several expeditions visited it, but not all returned in full. The former expedition members could not explain what really happened to them in the Lagmansky region. They said that the equipment in those places was malfunctioning, that some of the explorers were losing their hair for some inexplicable reason, and that all the members of the expedition were suffering from severe headaches. Moreover, there are many testimonies of people observing strange flashes or beams over the local forest that were hitting a certain place from above, and even luminous points that moved randomly across the sky. But what were they? Mirages and hallucinations due to strong geomagnetic anomalies or tests of some secret military apparatuses or something otherworldly? Questions that still remain unanswered. It is worth saying that almost all the villagers moved to other villages and towns away from the perilous place. The village is deserted and only abandoned houses testify to the fact that people once lived here. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and write what you think about it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support is very important to me.